here at Shenandoah University. At 2 o'clock in this very room, we had a gathering of, I don't know, hundreds of faculty, staff, and students. And at International Convocation for 30 years or more, we have been celebrating all things international at Shenandoah. So we recognize, we have a speaker who talks about their international experiences. And today we had an international designer who actually has a sustainable line. She was astonishing. We recognize members of the community who have supported the international mission at Shenandoah and also who live it in their lives. Faculty, staff, students, trustees, community members, that's a really important recognition. But I have to admit, the really big part of the day is that we announce the locations for the GCP trips. Now let me tell you a little bit about the GCP trips for those of you who aren't familiar. When frankly many of us were in school, study abroad meant a semester or maybe a year in another country, right? A number of students did it. Personally, I was an engineer. I did not know a single engineer who studied abroad, nor did I. That was not for me or my people. My English major roommate, she spent a semester in London. Me, not in the lineup. That was actually true for a lot of disciplines, whether it didn't seem relevant for them, or in some cases, they couldn't find time for it in the curriculum. And so about 20 years ago, the short study abroads became more popular. So these are 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, usually, and it's a single course that goes to another country and studies whatever it is in the context of that country. And there's always a reason, to be there. I mean, these are meaningful experiences. They are credit-bearing. And there are ways that students can get an important international experience without taking an entire semester or an entire year. They have been tremendously popular everywhere, including at Shenandoah. This year we are running, I believe, 17 of these courses. We call them GELS, Global Experiential Learning, and they're terrific. They're really good. But there's still a couple of issues. They're relatively expensive. You go abroad, sometimes for a semester, sometimes you can do it on an exchange, where you actually pay tuition here and then just go there so you can use your financial aid. These GELS, although we keep the price down better than most places, they cost typically $3,000 or $4,000, even $5,000 for this short period of time for one course. So there's a financial barrier for some students. And for some students saying, oh yeah, I'm just gonna take this semester and go to, or this 3 weeks and go to Croatia or South Korea or Cuba. That kind of feels like a big step because they've maybe never been on a plane, maybe never been out of the region or even the state. And so it's just sort of, it's like, yeah, that's something that happens over there, but it's still not something that it would make sense for me to do. And so there's still a big barrier there. So we have both of those. We send students for a semester and a year, and we have a lot of GEL trips, but we have a third program, the Global Citizenship Project. Every spring break, we send 5 trips to 5 different destinations around the world, each with at least 10 participants. 8 students, a faculty member, a staff member, sometimes a trustee will come along, and 1 or 2 trip leaders. They go over spring break, so it's 9 or 10 days. It's not credit bearing, it's not related to a course. The students are graduate and undergraduate, they're across the institution. And there are 2 really particularly interesting things about it. One is that when the students apply for it, they can't apply to go to a particular place. And there's a reason for that, because they don't know what the places are. Let's see, this is our 13th year, is that right? We've been to almost 60 destinations. How many? 65, okay, I was undershooting it, okay? So it's not like they can say, well, last year they went to London, Paris, and Oslo, so I'm sure they'll do that again, right? only a handful have been repeated. So they don't know where they're going. The way they apply is by arguing that they need to be a global citizen. They need to go somewhere. And they do that in an essay. The other thing that's really unique about it is that it's all paid for by the university. So it does not cost the students really anything. Sometimes a little bit of pocket money while they're there, but other than that, is covered by the university. Holy cow. I have told this, I've talked about this program to people from countless other universities. And every time I do, I think, oh, don't tell them because they'll start doing it. But they never do. And I have not once, not a single time, encountered any other institution that does it, or frankly, anyone who had ever heard of anything like it. And what they always say is, how do you do it? How do you pay for it? And the answer, of course, there's this wonderful birth story for GCP, which is that in, I believe, 2004, Nancy Larrett Crosby, who was a national author, longtime friend of the university and former trustee, passed away and left a gift to the university that was unrestricted, except it had 3 requirements. It had to go to learning, it had to have an impact across the institution, and it had to be used now. It couldn't go into the endowment. It had to be actually used for something now. And so Shenandoah, this was before my time, but I've often heard Tracy tell this story, and she told it today at International Convocation. And so Shenandoah got together a group of faculty, staff, students, put them in a room and said, think of something really amazing to do with this. They asked for the mission statement, always a good sign. They got it. And at some point, many hours later, I think they had to get some food in between, they came out with the idea for the Global Citizenship Project, as I have just described it to you. What an amazing idea. And you know, one thing about Shenandoah, this is my 5th year here, we are sort of audaciously ambitious. I mean, we do things that other people wouldn't do. Other people would say, yeah, but you can't do that. I mean, really, you know, so many people apply, how do you know where you'll go, will you set up the trips? It'll cost too much, the money won't last long enough, you know, how are you gonna do all this? And we just did it. And sure enough, after a few years, we had used up that initial money, but by then, GCP was a thing. And it was having such an impact on the community. And you know what? Donors continued to donate to it. They would sponsor an individual to go, or they would sponsor an entire trip sometimes, or they'd just say, here's $20 or $100, please put this towards GCP. And we built some of it into our budget because it was so important. And frankly, we're not a rich institution, and we run lean, but this was really making a difference. And so we built it in. And so between that and ongoing, incredibly generous donor support, it has continued to this day.
In the years that I've been here, it's been amazing to watch students, you know, as Adrian said, sometimes they have never been maybe on a plane. I remember taking a group to Indonesia, which is where I grew up, and one of the girls was a graduate student, and she'd never been on a plane. Her first plane ride was a 16-hour straight trip to Seoul, South Korea, and then more hours in Indonesia. She was a real trooper. But to see people being open to that and just sort of diving in and being willing to try everything has been really amazing. And then to see how that changes them, like the year later and the year after that. You know, there are many students I can think of that this was their first time out of Valley. Some of the Winchester folks who had never been anywhere and then came back and brought their family on their first plane ride, did a study abroad, done Peace Corps. So it really does have impacts beyond, you know, just a free trip over spring break. I know we have some students here who are going to give their story, so I don't want to sort of preempt them, but I will say that in the years we've been doing this program, it has taken 820 individuals around the world to 65 countries. So yeah, your gifts, your support of this program has a real impact for a lot of people, even though, like I said, only 50 a year, but that adds up really fast. And each of those people interacts with so many other people across the institution and at home and in their future lives. So let me think if there's anything else program specific. Yeah, one of the things I love about it too is that an institution like Shenandoah is so diverse. We have students from health professions, conservatory, business, arts and sciences, and some of them wouldn't have a chance to really get to know one another. But if you've traveled, you know that if you spend 10 days in a travel situation, you get to know them really well. So, for good or evil, I think it's usually for good. So one of the things that's really amazing about this program is that we're really intentional about, once we've sort of picked the students, is figuring out, okay, it's like a big jigsaw. So here's our students, there's a criminal justice and a dancer and a pharmacy student, and we're trying to figure out where should we send them, and they've been to this part of the world before, let's not send them there, or they've never been anywhere, what seems like a good place for them. We can go back and read their essays sometimes and try to figure that out. So it's really kind of like a little bit of a magic thing to see, like today when they find out where they're going, and then later after they come back to hear their stories. So without further ado, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to the students so we can hear some of those stories. Renee, are you first? Renee Jeanette.
Everybody. I'm Renee Jeanette, and I am a junior elementary education major and a dance minor and math minor. I had the privilege last year to go to Peru, and this journey completely changed my life and the way that I see the world now. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you for your all continued support for the students at Shenandoah. We really want to learn, and this is a great opportunity for all of us. So, as the application process began, I was nervous, I was freaking out. I mean, everybody is. Like, this is an opportunity to go and get to know your students, your fellow students, and your faculty more than anything else at the school. I wrote my essay based on mostly the small town that I grew up in. I'm one of those people who has a pretty sheltered life. I have only been out of the country for tropical beach vacations, and I eat the diet of a 12-year-old. I like mac and cheese and french fries and chicken tenders. And I was like, I need to go, I need to get out of here, I need to do something else. So I wanted to expand my horizons and just really get out of my comfort zone. And I think that my essay, I kind of talked about that, and I think my willingness to be completely submerged in this program really got me chosen. But the international convocation, the scariest time of my life. I was like, these people are going to see all of my emotions. I'm about to find out who I'm going with. I don't know where I'm going, and what if I don't like it? What do I do? I can't hide anything. But a picture like this of Machu Picchu was on the screen, and I was ecstatic. I mean, I went home and I did Google what foods I might be eating, because I was picky. So next on this journey was the several GCP meetings that we had, and we got to talk to our group members and get to know them some more and talk about culture and what it meant to us. So we mainly talked about how we see culture, how we define it, and then how other countries define it, and some of the social cues that we might see other places, and how we sometimes degrade other cultures without realizing it. So that was interesting. And some of the people in my group, I had an actor, a senior music education, 2 grad students, 3 faculty members, a freshman baseball player, and 2 freshman girls who hadn't gone anywhere. So we had a lot of diversity in my group. So that was so exciting for me, because I was like, I probably would never have talked to these people before. So the fact that I got the chance to hear their opinions and their beliefs and their different sides and take on culture was super interesting to me. Dr. Miles Davis was supposed to go on our trip, and unfortunately he couldn't come, so Dr. Fritz Polite came with us and helped us have an incredible trip. And then we also had Carolina Moyer, who is a student here, but she was originally from Peru, so she came and was kind of like the leader for us. So the morning that we left, I was freaking out. I was about to be shipped out of the country for 10 days with a bunch of strangers. I was like, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm gonna do, what if I don't like these people, but I was like, I have to go, I'm gonna just do it and jump in and just not be worried, I'm gonna do it all. But we had a 4-hour plane ride, and I've only been on a plane ride for 2 hours, so that was a big step. And then we had an hour layover in El Salvador, and then 4 more hours, and we landed in Lima at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The next day, we got up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, no sleep, and we just had to get up and go and roll and just do everything. But some of my favorite memories from Peru, we went to a hacienda, which is kind of like a plantation, and we went to the underground slave tunnels, and we saw the torch markings on the ceiling. We went on a 4-hour bike ride around the city of Lima, where we tried a bunch of different foods and tried not to hit all of the pedestrians, because that was very hard. And we went on a hike with llamas up the mountain in an indigenous village. We had a dinner and a show, and I got to go up on stage and learn some of their dance moves, and that was awesome, dance minor. Then we took that bumpy bus ride up to Machu Picchu, which was very scary, but we did it. I think I asked the most questions for my tour guide, and my group really wanted to strangle me, but I was like, I'm here to learn, I gotta ask, I gotta see. So I learned that in Peru, they had a similar time to our civil rights movement, and they had a bunch of racial issues, and I didn't even know that was a thing there. Most of them speak 2 languages. It's called Quechua, besides Spanish. There's stray dogs everywhere, just running around. But while I was learning all these different facts about Peru, I learned so much about the people in my group and their take on that information and how that related to their lives. And that was one of the coolest things to me, that it wasn't just about what I was learning, it was how they were taking it and receiving that information. Peru was beautiful, and I learned so much, and it was so exciting, but like my favorite part about GCP is that I got to meet these people in my group that I would probably have never talked to before, and I made a close connection with them, and some of us still talk to this day. We have group chat, and we're texting all day, and I just think it's interesting that we get this opportunity to talk to these people and listen to them, and now we have this forever bond from this trip because we traveled for 10 days nonstop, all these people, and it was annoying at times, but it was a wonderful experience that really, like, to this day, I talk about it all the time, and my roommates get so mad at me. I'm still going on and on about, oh, I did this in Peru, and I did this in Peru, look at my Peru shirt. So it was an amazing opportunity for me, and I'm so very thankful for it, and I appreciate all of that, everybody.
Dzień dobry, everyone. Welcome. My name is Wade Bailey. I'm a senior this year at Shenandoah. I'm a business administration major with a concentration in accounting and a minor in political science. I plan on continuing here after I graduate in the spring for my MBA, and then taking the test to be a CPA after that, because I had required credit points. I knew I made the right choice to come to Shenandoah on my first day of class. My very first class was Intro to Business with Dr. Good, who's no longer here. But I walked in the class timidly. There was 40 other people already sitting down. I had no clue if I was in the right building or not. But I asked Dr. Good, I was like, this is the right class, right? He's like, yeah, of course. We're waiting on you. I was like, okay, right, fine. But it was at that moment I knew I picked the right school, because from then on I formed a relationship with him, and then with many other professors since then. It's that relationship that really is something that's unique about Shenandoah. I walk across professors I haven't had in years, and they still remember my first name. They still talk with me about my goals in the future and how to reach them. And that's something I value, and it's something that I've learned and continue to learn along with GCP. So last year I went to Poland. What you're seeing there is a picture of Wrocław, as specifically the market square. It's considerably more busier than that photo will tell you, though. Also a lot colder. It was my third time applying. I applied since my freshman year, so freshman, sophomore, and then junior year is when I finally got accepted. It took a lot, but I know that when I put a lot into that essay, we got the return of this program. So I'll be talking to you a little bit tonight about the experiences I had in Poland, but primarily some of the key takeaways. A lot of us hopefully have had the opportunity to travel or travel more in the future, so we all know some of the things, why we go. We go because there's awesome food, there's awesome culture, there's awesome people. But there's also those key takeaways that we take home and that we remember, we tell our friends and our family, that really have an impact. So those are some of the things I'll focus on more in a little bit here. Also, I wanted to take a special moment of time to thank our donors, because without this, none of this is possible. I would not be here today without you guys. experience. I could not afford to travel. I could not afford to come to a university without financial help. So with your ability, I'm able to be a 3.97 GPA student graduating with highest honors this coming spring because of you guys. So I thank you for that. And to the, I see a few people that were accepted for this year's GCP program. Congrats to you all. You guys definitely are going to have a great time. So to go to brief background of Poland in general, it's a really fascinating country to study, especially with our theme of heritage last year. Throughout history, Poland's been consistently divided, conquered, and redistributed multiple times. Most specifically with World War I and World War II is where they had just tremendous tragedy of losing millions of their own citizens, as well as the Holocaust in World War II, losing 3 million ethnic Jews and around 2 or so million ethnic Poles. To put that in perspective, that's roughly, what, half of Virginia's population or so? I mean, it's easy to say numbers, but when you think about it like that, it's just how much impact that event had. But even after the war, the Soviets took over Poland, and the communist government ruled until 1989. And that moment is when they shed off the failure that communism was, and they adapted to capitalism and a democracy, and they still have that today. Just this past November 11th was their 99th Independence Day, dating back to 1918, when they formed to be a country again after the Great War. So to go with my experience after when we first left, we went to 3 cities, pronounced them in English because how you say it in Polish is completely different. That's Wrocław, Krakow, and Warsaw, which is the capital. Each city had its own market square, very similar to this. It's literally a square, and there's jam-packed with buildings. There's vendors in the middle, the street food. There's a lot of crafts. It's just an incredible place to be, and just seeing everyone going about their day, bicycles and carriage rides and street performers. Each city had its own distinctive influence. Some was more considerably German or Russian, depending on geographically where you were. Warsaw specifically was leveled during World War II, with the Warsaw Uprising after that failed. The whole city is literally leveled. Every single building in that place was destroyed. The Jewish population in Warsaw was brought down to literally 0 after that. And it's still considerably lower today, so that impact is still lasting after 70 years. The Poles are very friendly people. Primarily they speak Polish, but most all of them were able to speak well enough English that we could get around pretty well. Some people specifically I'll be talking about tonight as well. So, like I said, the primary reasons why we go to travel isn't because we want to experience new food, and it isn't, to a point, it isn't just to experience new culture, but it's also the takeaways that you come back when you come home. Now, a few of those I want to talk about tonight. It was really hard to narrow them down because I could probably go until midnight talking about it. But so the first one is one that's going to be universal across the board. It's the bond with our group. Some people that we've touched on before. When we go, you don't know primarily you're not going to know anybody that's in your group. I was the only business student in my class. We had one business professor, but no one else had my background. So I had to figure out ways to communicate with those in the conservatory, those taking biology, with my views, and also hear their views back. It's the cross-discipline conversations that we had that, back home would be considered controversial. Over there, it's, hey, we've been up for 30 hours, let's talk about immigration policy at home. And it's those talks that broaden my own perspective. It's viewpoints that I didn't think about from business school. And it's something I can still has an impact on me today while I'm thinking about these topics. So the people I'm talking about specifically tonight are, again, their names are exactly right, it's the English version. But our driver in Wrocław and Krakow, his name was Tomas. And throughout the days there, he would travel with us during the walking tours of the city, and he would help us answer questions. And a couple nights we had dinner with him, so I was just able to talk to him about his business, things he overcame, problems that he had, bring perspectives from our side, say, hey, well, how can you differentiate yourself from your other competition? It's something he really got to enjoy. So not only did I get to give my impact on him, but he also gave my impact back on us, me specifically being the business student. 2 other ladies, Gosia and her daughter Agnes, they are experts in the field of education in Poland. Gosia specifically has a role in the government and in education. So we got to visit universities and actually see their process of learning, problems that they had with education in general, and relating that back to home, being able to find solutions to the common problem. And then along with others, there's a lot of other various people that we met. My first train ride was a businessman. I got to talk to him about consulting. And it's something you don't expect. I'm on a train ride, and then I'm talking to someone that is actually pretty related to what I studied before. It really was impactful. 2 other places that we went to. One is called the Amigo Schools outside of Rothschild. It's like a middle school for us, about the equivalent, but it's specifically those for learning disabilities. And seeing the drive of the teachers there, that actually, just like back home, is that they actually care about their students. Seeing them sacrifice and put themselves forward so everyone can learn, regardless of their status, it was really impactful. Especially in Poland, the accommodations is just not there comparatively to the U.S. The Celestin Rehabilitation Center was for people with further disabilities and also adults. But what's really impactful about that is that there was one family who had a disabled son, and there was no place to accommodate them. They couldn't afford to take care of him full time, but they had to. So what they did, they set up their own rehabilitation center, one of the few in the area, or few today in the area, the first one of its time. And they were able to take care of a lot of other families that weren't able to take care of their own children. And they still do that today. So seeing their determination, their passion for what they did is something that at the end of the day, everyone's just sitting back like, these people, this is what we should strive to be every day. Sacrificing for everyone that is around us that just can't function without us. And then probably the most impactful of them in terms of feelings was World War II specifically. Like I said, 3 million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust, and in Poland specifically, and another 2 million or so ethnic Poles were killed. So it's one thing to learn about that in our education, seeing it on the internet, but going to a place where the original ghetto wall is still standing since 1940s, and where literally thousands of people in a room smaller than this were executed, is really, really impactful on you. And that's something I'm going to remember today forever, is the determination of some people like Oskar Schindler to risk their own lives for someone else. That's something I'm going to consistently remember. But GCP didn't end when we get home. It continues on today. So I know a lot of people think, yeah, well, what do I do when I get home? All right, well, how do I give back? Well, for me, that's partly being able to talk in classes. When we bring up a piece of policy, say HR, we'll say, okay, well, we have these accommodations here in the States. Poland doesn't have those accommodations. They don't have as strict laws as we do. So it brings value to the discussion that wasn't normally there. Another thing is being able to give back, like tonight, talking to you all, to the donors, people that are going on GCP. It's nice to share that viewpoint with them, because I know when I was first starting out, getting to hear opinions about other people that already went was really helpful for me, and helped share some of that fear that I had for my first plane ride out of the country. And also with the application process is a huge process that people that were accepted, because the process is incredibly competitive. We had to grade hundreds of essays, so you're literally the top of the people that apply. So I mean, take yourself and give yourself a pat on the back, because you guys truly did earn it. And I got excited about that specifically as a side anecdote, because I got to use Excel, and I love Excel. So, but I'm an accounting major, or accounting concentration, so I use my tools. And then with the study abroad fair, talking to freshmen that were considering applying to, so encouraging them to take write their one essay and go for it. It's a free trip. It's an incredible trip. It's one that they're going to have an impact in their entire lives. So without our donors, none of this would be possible. I can say for sure, I would not be here standing today if it wasn't for you all. Without GCP, there was back when I went in March, I was taking a research methods class for my political science minor. And after 20 hours of nonstop grinding, getting my data ready and doing analysis on it, and the code not working, I was that close to giving up on that project. And going on GCP, it gave me the life back to continue on, to push forward, and getting an A on that final project and having significant results on my stats. So it really did have an impact on me. The mission statement of the business school is to educate students to become successful principal leaders with a global perspective. To those that have gone in the past, those who are going in the future, they're going to get that lifelong experience to bond with their group, to experience a different culture, and to promote education and to gain that global perspective. Thank you all.